Hi everybody, my name is Lily and I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and today we're chatting about religious trauma in fantasy books. When I was reflecting, on 2025 as a year, I had a lot of kind of revelations about myself. And one of them, among others, was that I am consistently every year drawn to books that evaluate and explore religious trauma, specifically in fantasy stories. So today I'm going to be chatting about three different books that I think, or that I read in 2025 that I thought really beautifully delved into these. And if you like those, to check them out. I only have two of the three here, but I will just hold them up. They are both actually just gorgeously stunning editions, but here they are. And let's just chat about the first one, The Night in the Moth. So I have two adult and one YA. And the first one that I'm going to chat about is The Night in the Moth. Gorgeous. Just stunning. Stunning, 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 just everywhere. The Night in the Moth was the first one that I read. And one of the first ones that absolutely stole my heart. Love this book to pieces. But basically, the premise of this book, in terms of the religious trauma aspect, is that one of the main characters is a diviner. She is basically giving out sort of prophecies that she has seen, and she sort of sacrifices to be there. She sort of essentially kind of lets herself be drowned to see these prophecies. All of a sudden, though, her sisters of the other diviners start going missing, and she's kind of wondering where they are, what's happening, why are we not concerned? Because when she brings it up to her religious order, to the people around her, they're kind of like, they'll come back. And she's sitting there, what, when, how, what, why? And then the newly appointed, or I guess not appointed, but the new king, and his knights come to visit, and he wants a prophecy. And then it sort of kicks off this emotional roller coaster for her, where she decides to kind of try to figure out where they are and leave, and starts to realize that not everything she knows about divining, not everything she knows about her sisters and the religious order is true. So this is a story which is romantic, but is also a story about navigating and exploring what happens when we've been lied to. That resonates with me a lot. But in this aspect, when you're dealing with religious trauma and exploring and questioning religious organizations, you have a lot of the not only exploitation of authority figures, which is a theme throughout this entire video, but you also have this kind of, there's religious orders, they kind of, I don't want to get into sticky situations. They kind of infect themselves into a worldview, right? They kind of have this worldview about how the world works, what's right, what's wrong. It becomes this kind of ethical compass, the way that we make sense of the world. And so as soon as we start questioning it, as soon as we start exploring what doesn't make sense, we start kind of realizing, does the world make sense? Does my place in the world make sense? Do I make sense? Kind of. And it really has this kind of emotional reckoning in which we have to figure out that nothing we know, either everything we've been told is true or nothing we've been told is true. There are very few cases where only some things that we haven't been told are true. And when we think about truth, we have to think of their version of truth, our version of truth. It's not always necessarily an objective truth. It's very often a subjective truth. That's how they make sense of the world. And so The Night in the Moth does this in such a beautiful way because it forces the main character to really kind of sit with, what has all the sacrifice been for, right? If some things about the world that I know are not true, what does it mean for what I've done for this world and what I've done, what I've been told about what my sacrifices are, why, essentially. And so The Night in the Moth answers this in such a gorgeous, heartbreaking, but also romantic, swoony way, about characters who are really trying to grapple with, in a variety of different ways as well, not just the main character, really trying to grapple with what happens when a foundational core belief of ours is betrayed, and what happens when a foundational core belief of ours is different than we thought. What do we do with that new world? Do we kind of just, eyes shut, move on from it? What do we kind of do when we realize we could be wrong and the people we trust might be wrong? So Obviously, love this one. The other one, which is another adult fantasy, is The Sacred Space Between or Within. The Sacred Space. Obviously, the cover's here, but The Sacred Space. Basically, in this one, the main character is a portrait. She is responsible for painting these little like miniature portraits of saints and things like that. And so she's supposed to go to another person who's supposed to get their portrait done, except the other person's kind of like, no, thank you. And she's all saying, well, this is my job. I have to do this. And also, this is really great, right? Everyone will pray to you. Everyone will sacrifice. Like, it will be fantastic. And then he's kind of like, nope, it will not be. Don't do this to me. And then we start kind of figuring out why he doesn't. Is she going to be able to convince him, to persuade him, to get close to him in order to persuade him? And it very much has a similar vibe in that sense to The Night and the Moth, where you slowly are kind of realizing that maybe people have a reason for what they're doing. Maybe there's a reason why we don't want this to happen. And also what would happen when a character is confronted with the truth, and what do they do about it? Because I think in The Night and the Moth, it's only one main character or one point of view, whereas The Sacred Space Within or Between, it actually has two different characters that we're kind of looking through. I don't know if they're technically dual perspective, but different characters, at least two, that we're looking at. So we know more about what's happening than like one of the main characters does. So that one is a little bit different in terms of how we're approaching the problem, or how we're approaching the kind of whole situation. But it has similar explorations of the theme and similar explorations of what happens after we know. The Night and the Moth is the first in a series. The second one is The Knave and the Moon. The Night and the Moth doesn't go, in my opinion, as far as The Sacred Space in Between. This is the first in a series. The Knave and the Moon has already been kind of revealed to everybody. Then in The Sacred Space Between, it goes a little bit further in terms of overall world implications, in my opinion, than The Night and the Moth. But they make fantastic conversation starters within. And if you're kind of waiting for The Knave and the Moon, so the sequel to The Night and the Moth, you should read The Sacred Space, because I think that if you're drawn to those themes, they make natural conversation partners. And the final one is my YA pick, which is Dragon Cursed. Beautiful. Stunning. The main character in Dragon Force is supposed to be the Valor Reborn, so basically kind of the chosen one, brought back from, or reborn, and she is going to deliver their society from dragons, essentially. Dragons are kind of wreaking havoc on everybody, forcing them to hide, forcing them underground in some situations. And so she's supposed to be the Valor Reborn and be kind of the savior to all of these different things. In this world, though, you can be dragon cursed, which means you're more likely to turn into a dragon. And so they're trying to get her into this academy, and to get into the academy, they have to just make sure. They just have to double check that you're not dragon cursed. And by doing that, they put them through awful trials to kind of try to force the dragon to come out, because the dragon comes out when they feel threatened or when their kind of body defenses are low. Like, they put them through awful tests to kind of force the dragon to come out. But that obviously is for the religious order, which is trying to train these people as soldiers to fight against dragons in their religious idea, and also the kind of Valor Reborn religious order system. And so that obviously is a component, this idea that we have to break people down to protect them, is a huge theme in this one, because also, as the chosen one, she is actually secretly worried that she is dragon cursed. But as well as the chosen one, she is also consistently kind of broken down and pushed past where any human honestly should be pushed to, forced to really try to be broken down to be made in someone else's image. Both of those themes, kind of this idea of being broken down to protect the world, or broken into pieces to be reformed into what the world wants us to be, into what this religious order wants you to be, Dragon Cursed. Like, if you like both of those things that I'm saying, you need to read this. It also has dragons. It also has kind of tests in an academy setting. It just is so, so good. But yeah, I think that all three of these books approaches this kind of worldview from different ways. I think this one is the most sort of antagonistic from the beginning, because both the main character, who is this Valar Reborn character, she realizes everything is just messed up. I don't think she realizes how far it's going to go until she kind of continues on with the book, but it's very much from a different perspective than the other two adult books, because the other two adult books are within the world, within the religious order, where they're both kind of like, at the moment things are okay, not okay. At the moment things are not okay for her. And so they come at this sort of religious trauma, this religious exploration, this idea of, an organization that exploits, that manipulates, that breaks people down, and that has kind of a carte blanche at the end of the day, from different aspects. But I think that this one is the most antagonistic of all of those in that sense. It feels a little bit more cathartic from the beginning, because you're kind of like, yeah, this is wrong and we all know it kind of vibe for this one. But I just wanted to mention it as well as a YA pick, in case you're also like, could we have our, explorations of religious trauma with a side of dragons? And that's this one. So those were the three books that I wanted to chat about. They are very much kind of the theme that I've been thinking about a lot as I reflect upon 2025, and I kind of wonder what the theme will be like for 2026. And I cannot wait for the sequels. Honestly, one of my highly anticipated sequels. I was thinking about doing an Arc Rob list, which I did for 2025. I'll leave that link down below. And then I realized, if you watched my 2025 favorites, which I'll also leave the link down below for, you already know what my Arc Rob list is. It's sequels of all of those things, basically. So let me know down below if you actually want me to still do that video idea. I'm sure I could come up with ones that were not sequels. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know as well if you know of some other fantasy books that deal with these themes. I would love to read them and add them to my 2026 thematic bingo card for this year. Have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and year. And I will see you in the next one.